Horus observed the seriousness of the elite dragons swarming in the sky to fight a single human, so this is what they call the overwhelming power of numbers. He then decided to greet them by creating a large moving puppet, a steel golem named Barrage. 15 years ago, a woman of unmatched beauty claimed the title of Demon King. Her excessive possessiveness had wiped out several major nations. Her skill, the great charm authority, could dominate any man. Her power transcended race. Even after her death, her control never vanished. The assassin of the Demon King even returned under the influence of her spell, becoming her loyal minion. Faced with such a tremendous and unstoppable power, the world fought back by creating numerous exceptions and loosening regulations. Now that the Demon King has finally been defeated, only those exceptions remain. How should they deal with the remnants of a time governed by relaxed rules? However, history had already proven the answer. In the royal palace hall of Diamante, a stout man with a thick mustache stood at the podium announcing a mass dismissal, creating disappointed expressions on everyone's faces. A grand royal palace like this was supposed to be staffed and inhabited only by the most competent nobles, carefully selected by fellow nobles. The World Council had prohibited occupational discrimination against commoners. That was the only reason they had been allowed to stay, but now that the Demon King was defeated, commoners had no right to remain here. And so Zate expelled them. A young man named Horus then raised his hand to ask a question regarding what should be done during the handover. However, he was enraged that someone dared ask such a thing to the head of the ducal family. The young man objected, saying that if commoners like them were told to leave, then they would. But they would be in trouble without any form of handover. Zate raised his hand, signaling the youth to stop talking and ordering everyone to listen. He had no interest in such trifles because those were things they should be able to handle on their own. After all, it made no sense for commoners to think they could teach nobles anything. They were forced to accept that there would be no handover in the end. The World Council also forbade tampering with personal belongings during dismissal. He then ordered the commoners to gather their things and leave. Horus had no choice but to agree, saying they would pack their belongings and leave immediately. He deeply appreciated all the old man had done and gave a respectful bow. Zate bid farewell, claiming he was busy and told Horus to step aside as he was blocking the way. After his departure, Horus sighed. Someone who believed everything could be resolved just by giving orders didn't understand the importance of a proper handover. He snapped his fingers, causing the people around him to explode, leaving only their clothes behind. Then, taking an item box from his chest, he absorbed everything scattered on the floor into it until nothing remained. At any rate, the golem operation trials were all complete. But he complained that he could no longer use the antenna now that the special permission to use royal property was revoked. His long legs began to stride as he thought about his control range, only 3 meters, which was too short, but he believed sacrificing range for faster processing speed was the right decision. If problems arose, he believed he'd find a way. For now, Horus would search for the best materials for the golem. Zate and King Barzal of the Diamante Kingdom were being attended by 2 female servants. The king commented that Zate seemed to be in a good mood. The stout man confirmed, admitting he had gotten rid of some bothersome matters earlier, so he felt refreshed. As the king was being groomed, he mentioned that they would attend a sudden World Council meeting to meet the hero. They couldn't afford to frown and make a bad impression. Someone reported that the teleportation setup was now ready for operation. The 2 of them were so surprised they forgot to prepare for the teleportation. Upon arrival at the meeting place, the king admitted he still wasn't used to teleportation. Zate told him to get used to it. The World Council managed the teleportation system, but in time it would become theirs. King Barzal only cleared his throat in response. They proceeded to the conference room. The guards opened the door and they entered while greeting everyone and took their seats. A man serving as the event host thanked everyone for waiting and promptly introduced the hero, who was the center of the meeting. It was one of the most impressive rumors. However, King Barzal's body trembled violently when he met the hero's gaze directly. In the village of Calcite, Horus leisurely enjoyed his meal after being dismissed. He felt like he could finally do what he had always wanted. However, it would take at least 10 years of research to complete this project, and he had a deadline. He decided to try his luck at the rare stone market near the large ore vein. Horus sighed. Someone then asked what he was daydreaming about while sitting in such a peaceful place. Turning around, he saw a man named Jinji pulling a horse cart, who also said he was ready to listen if Horus wanted to talk. Horus then vented that just when he thought he had finally escaped a black company, he had to face time constraints for the things he wanted to achieve. Still, it seemed his luck kept being tested. He apologized for rambling without thinking. Jinji pointed out that at least he was self-aware and reminded him that the Dragonstone Kingdom was not a peaceful place. The young man knew Horus was heading to a treasure capital named Lapis, and it turned out they were going to the same place, as Jinji was a merchant. Once in Lapis, Horus would find all kinds of metals, and even be able to trade rare metals from the ore vein there. Horus agreed but noted that the axle of the cart was old, earning him praise for his keen eyes. He admitted he was involved in the technology behind it. Jinji fell silent. Lapis was quite far and Horus didn't have a vehicle. He had been hitching rides with others. In return, Jinji offered to take him to Lapis. Horus agreed to fix the cart. That was the deal they finally made. Before they could shake hands, the ground suddenly shook. Horus immediately ran toward the source of the tremor, leaving Jinji confused. Horus saw a purple-scaled dragon flying in the air in a chain. The thought of a dragon appearing in a place like this made him laugh. Urif Kiode, heir to the noble Kiode family of the Diamante Kingdom, appeared and claimed he would handle it. Horus wasn't even sure he'd get a chance. 4 mages on Urif's side restrained the dragon with chains made of magic, making the man laugh in satisfaction. Horus also saw a mage throwing a stone. The enraged dragon burned down houses. Jinji warned that it was dangerous, but Horus ignored him. Someone then screamed that their daughter was still inside the burning house, yet there was nothing they could do in such a fire. Horus immediately rushed through the crowd. Though they warned him, he ignored them too. Inside the house, Horus called out that he had come to help and asked anyone trapped to say something, but there was no response. He kept pushing through the flames in search until he found an unconscious child. The little girl wasn't dead but was in critical condition, knocked out by a collapsed roof. Horus used his ability to restore her condition. However, there was no response. Suddenly, something stirred, making Horus hug the girl tighter. Outside, Urif was trying to force the dragon to submit and had warned that something like this would definitely happen. The roof collapsed again, and Horus quickly shielded himself and the girl in his arms. He also turned to deflect something that flew toward them. Before leaving, Horus took a teddy bear and placed it in Nash's arms. They emerged outside safely. Jinji asked if he was okay, but Horus instead told him the girl in his arms was fine and just unconscious. The young man peeked and was speechless upon seeing Horus return without a single injury, utterly amazed. A mother quickly ran to her child. Horus explained that Nasha had inhaled smoke and fainted but would wake up with some rest. Once the child was in her mother's arms, the woman expressed deep gratitude. Jinji held back, even though he had many questions burning with curiosity about Horus. The farce that played out before everyone's eyes was about a mage who brought down a dragon from afar. Urif slashed the fallen dragon, but it seemed he didn't hurt it at all. Jinji asked Horus for his thoughts, and it turned out he had already sensed something bad was going to happen. Urif was still playing around with the dragon, continually swinging his sword. The dragon then went berserk, breaking the chains binding it, spun around, and flung Urif to the ground. It was a truly humiliating event, but to Jinji, it was better described as refreshing. Horus ran to intercept the dragon just as it lost interest. The dragon prepared to attack the mages, and Horus drew nearer. He saw the chains in the mage's hands. He didn't actually have a personal issue with the dragon, but if the mages ended up reusing it, that would be a problem. So Horus destroyed it in a single slash and stored it in an item box. He figured that should be enough to cover it up. On the journey, Jinji asked about all the gold coins he had left behind. However, Horus didn't mind at all. He had stolen those gold bars, but if someone were to carry that much gold on their body, it would be a huge problem for someone like him right now. However, Jinji said that Horus was too kind and didn't need to be that generous. Besides, all the houses were burned down. He thought it was also meant to help cover the repair costs. Horus can fear. Made that assumption, but after looking inside the house, it didn't seem like a single mother situation. He was even quite sure the father was also there. Still, if the whole house burned down, that must be very painful. Jinji understood that, so he didn't plan to take a detour if Jinji agreed. Of course, Jinji said he didn't mind. The leader of the hero community, Ruster Report, Hero Langia, had been introduced in the meeting room. As a form of respect for his success in saving the world, King Barzal would grant him any reward he wished. Langia then asked for one thing he desired for his teacher Horus, the man who trained him and the other 5 core executives of the Ruster Report who paved the way for the Demon King's defeat. He requested international polygamy. Horus was indeed an ordinary person, but he was a very powerful golem master in this world. In the letter that Ruster Report received a week ago, it was mentioned that he worked at the Diamante Royal Palace. Zate, who heard that statement, was shocked because he remembered that he had fired everyone. He panicked because Horus might be one of those he had expelled. So that was how it was. King Barzal had expelled Langia's teacher, creating condemnation from other members of the World Council. The leader of the Diamante Kingdom was flustered and claimed to know nothing. If it weren't for that letter, Langia would not have known that his teacher worked in the Diamante Kingdom. Horus always kept it a secret, and that was really annoying. King Barzal became very annoyed at Zate, who was still pretending to be sweet. First of all, due to the influence of the Demon King, the World Council issued special regulations urging countries to appoint commoners to key positions. Many countries believed that by embracing commoners, they could gain enough national power to resist the Demon King's invasion. However, it seemed that the Diamante Kingdom did not follow such a way of thinking. King Barzal and Zate were further humiliated by Langia's words. Considering where his teacher was going, polygamy privileges were unnecessary, but civil rights were required to access that location. Langia then stepped forward and said he believed His Majesty was bedridden due to illness, so Princess Lucia of the Dragonstone Kingdom was here as his representative. He needed the princess to grant citizenship to Horus and all members of Ruster Report, to use the rare stone market, which gathered rare minerals under the jurisdiction of the Dragonstone Kingdom. Langia requested citizenship in the treasure capital Lapis. He asked for this as a reward for defeating the Demon King. Lucia herself was speechless, as was King Barzal, who could not accept this. He wanted to refuse but was powerless to speak, especially under Langia's intimidating gaze. The hero community Ruster Report, although they were commoners, were able to defeat the Demon King with just one group. Their power was extraordinary. Moreover, they were all known to be handsome. King Barzal still could not simply hand them over to another country and judged this to be completely unreasonable. Especially for a person like that, Langia asked them not to be arrogant. King Barzal instead stalled time with silly questions, making Langia annoyed because he still didn't understand what he wanted. Regarding the request for the Golem Master Horus, King Barzal knew Langia only sought access to rare minerals. The Diamante Kingdom was the largest among all nations. With its trade network, Horus could obtain rare minerals not only from the Dragonstone Kingdom, but also from many other places. He suspected Langia was insisting that Horus be given special rights to access those minerals uniquely and told him to think again. However, Langia knew that in reality, King Barzal's greatness was only in name. It was just that the people evacuated due to the Demon King's invasion had gathered here. No one could deny it because his words were facts. The reason Ruster Report could support so many civilians was thanks to his teacher's power as a golem master. He created the golem sticks that could handle 10 times the workload of a normal person and control more than 500 of them at once. King Barzal did not believe it and said it was impossible. That was how powerful Horus was, yet King Barzal had fired all those staff. And now, the Diamante Kingdom would face financial difficulties. So there was no use for Horus to stay in a place like that. With the Demon King defeated, special regulations were enforced across all countries. Now it was quickly losing its power. One of these special regulations related to loans. Because the world was in an emergency due to the Demon King's invasion, many loan sharks were forced to accept payment extensions or interest rate limits. Some leaders were even forced to provide unilateral financial support. Such things could not be destroyed by force, but strangely, no one ever heard rumors of dissatisfaction from the country leaders. That was because the Hero Community Ruster Report prepared almost the entire payment amount in gold coins and bought the debt bonds themselves. The Hero Community also ran lending operations. From the country's perspective, the country with the largest debt was the Diamante Kingdom. King Barzal was really baffled by the facts exposed by Langia. Furthermore, Langia pointed to the man behind the king, who was the head of the Lugisak noble family, having the largest debt of all. Selling his inheritance alone would not be enough to cover it. Zate, terrified that his secret was exposed, immediately fell backward along with the chair he was sitting on. Even so, repayment was made in installments, and the interest rate was very low. Langia asked Zate to repay it slowly. However, among all the nations, only Dragonstone had actually paid off its debts. The silver dragon sword, Tael Agartha, the sword Langia used to defeat the Demon King, was made in the Dragonstone Kingdom. Everything became clear as King Barzal considered whether to side with the indebted country or not. The reward for granting Langia and his teacher citizenship in the Dragonstone Kingdom and the treasure capital, Lapis. The girl asked if this should be considered approved. Lucia understood and said the Dragonstone Kingdom had recognized Langia's citizenship and granted him citizenship in the treasure capital, Lapis. Langia was very grateful, and then Lucia said she still had her own preparations, so she excused herself. After her departure, Langia reminded all the World Council members that if anything happened to Princess Lucia, they would have to face him. Then he left the meeting room as well. In the Dragonstone Kingdom, precisely in the treasure capital, Lapis, while others were busy queuing, Langia sat in the waiting chair, sighing. Then he turned when someone passed by. It turned out to be Horus. He quickly hugged him after calling his name. The young man tried to push her away, but Langia was too happy because she finally truly met her teacher. Horus himself was puzzled because the girl acted very differently than usual, so Langia reasoned that her teacher was very special. Seeing people starting to glance curiously, Horus asked her to wait a moment because he needed to finish some documents. However, Langia said it wasn't necessary because Ruster Report had already obtained citizenship and also citizenship for Horus while showing a paper. The young man did not expect Langia to get it so quickly, so the girl hurriedly pulled him towards their mansion. She had acquired a large house through Ruster Report and invited Horus to live together. A girl his age said that, leaving Horus bewildered. Horus rubbed his shoulders upon arriving in front of the very large house after being forcibly dragged to his favorite place. Terrace, who hadn't met them for a long time, welcomed them, especially Horus. She admitted she had been waiting for the day they could all live under one roof like this, even saying she would give them a tour. There were no signs of others around, so clearly for now there were only Langia and Terrace. So that was how it was. For now the cleanup was finished, but they had not finished tidying up. The two girls had also prepared a room for Horus to make golems inside. Horus was very impressed because they had really tried their best, although Terrace admitted she hadn't done anything to repay because Horus had helped so far. At least this was what she could do. Horus and Langia then began to look around the room. This place truly had various kinds of metals. With this arrangement, Horus would be able to fully focus on his research. Usually, it took at least 4 years to obtain citizenship or national status. Since everything was ready, the young man could work on many further things. Horus patted the top of their heads to say thanks. However, actually there were still many rare metals here, so he asked about the cost for all this. Langia answered all of this only cost pocket change. Horus ended the conversation. A girl was standing outside the large house. She came to see for herself the true power of the hero's teacher. She is Ederica, who then complained about this hero's large house, because they had been walking since the gate but still hadn't arrived. However, she would not let that affect her, because she was a palace alchemist from the kingdom of the Chaos Stone Dragon. Moreover, she came here on an official request from Lucia. The one who should be nervous was the so-called mentor of the hero. Lucia asked her to conduct an investigation. Ederica, of course, already knew that the kingdom had agreed to accept the hero community and grant national citizenship to all its members. That was why they needed to evaluate it properly, but it was still a big question whether they could really be trusted. Even if they could be trusted, the members were more than 1 or 2. However, Lucia did end. I'd ask Ederica to investigate all members. It was enough for her to investigate the person who raised the hero, named Horus, because he was